All right, so we'll start. So today, Nick and I are presenting on the virtual audit and how the trajectory of the virtual audit kind of shifted based on the environment that COVID made. So a lot of people were already, as we'll touch on, a lot of people are already, going this route to have a virtual audit. But COVID really added a new dynamic to this, and this is something that we're going to be discussing today. So basically, the outline of our presentation, we're going to start with understanding what a virtual audit is, and then we're going to move into the controversy surrounding the virtual audit. What are the benefits? Why are people hesitant to switch to virtual audit? And then we're going to move into how COVID impacted the virtual auditing environment to really understand how the rate of the virtual audit kind of changed, and then what is going forward. How are we going to go forward with the virtual audit based off what we learned in the COVID era we're in. So to start off, I think it's important to understand what the virtual audit is. So we have a great quote by Professor Mikos of what the virtual audit is. It's basically, he defines it as the process by which auditors couple information and communication technology with data analytics to assess the accuracy of financial data and internal controls, gather electronic evidence, and interact with clients, all without the need to be physically present. So the virtual audit is basically the traditional audit, except you're utilizing a lot of technology and leveraging technology to perform the auditing. So a traditional audit, the normal phases of it is that you first start with audit planning, you define the scope, you set your objectives, then you have the kickoff meeting with the client, you then conduct field work, and you gather information, perform testing, and then throughout this, you're communicating the results back and forth with the client, and then you have the audit exit meeting, which you discuss your findings of the audit and any recommendations that you found that would be helpful. And then you have an audit report. This is a formal document. So the virtual audit is basically doing all this with leveraging technologies. So we're going to get into some of the technologies right here. So they're basically coupled into 4 general categories. You have data and document management technologies like Dropbox, Cloud, PDFs, Excel, etc. Then you have inventory auditing, ways to measure and count inventory. You use drones, cameras, sensors, GoPros, and iCount, which we'll get into later. Then you have communication interview tech, which is Microsoft Teams, Slack, Zoom. And then you have this other category, which we spent a lot of time on in the class, such as RPA, artificial intelligence, machine learning, blockchain, and continuous audit platforms. So why would someone switch to virtual audit? The benefits of virtual audit are basically coupled into these couple categories. So the main benefit is efficiency. You save time and money with a virtual audit. So you do this by reducing the travel and commuting of their employees and clients. You have more access, you have quicker access to documentation, and there's more fluidity with information sharing. So instead of asking the client for information, sometimes in a virtual audit environment, the data could be in a database, and you just basically access the documentation that you need. And then you have greater accessibility to audit teams and clients. Instead of going to the client site, getting badged, finding a room, booking a room, setting up meetings, you can just jump on a quick 15-minute call with the client. So it's a lot easier and quicker to set up these meetings. And then while you have more of a virtual environment when you're auditing, there's more, there's more of you can also automate the manual steps. So a lot of this automation we saw increases efficiency, cuts costs, so it's definitely a main benefit. And then you have external auditor independence. So there's less face-to-face client engagement. And so because there's less face-to-face engagement, you have less interpersonal relationships between the auditor and the client. So this possibly may minimize the risk of contamination by the auditor. If they possibly could detect an area that could be fraud, they may give them the benefit of the doubt if they're close with them. So this is just something, there's more independence with the virtual environment through less interpersonal relationships. Then you have an added number of opportunities with a virtual environment. So you have the capability to remotely audit, allows for greater access to clients, so you're no longer limited to your geographical area to audit. And then you also have the ability to take on more clients. So the virtual audit environment basically reduces time and basically makes you more efficient overall. So you're able to take on more clients because of that reduced time to audit. And then there's less human capital is less dependent on the geographical area as well. So talent pools are no longer limited to geographical areas. So auditors can really audit anywhere, and auditing firms can get the best talent that's out there. So there's also some resistance, and so this is before COVID-19. So people that didn't want to make the switch, some of the reasons that they didn't want to make the switch was that they're really hesitant to invest and learn new technologies. So there's a steep learning curve with a lot of new technologies that companies may not just want to put the time into. Even if it will help them in the long run, they don't want to sacrifice that short-term investment. Also don't want to convert documentation to virtual, maybe physical documents to virtual documents, because maybe they have a lot of documents that are physical and they just don't want to spend the time in doing that. There's also cybersecurity risks. They may be fearful that if they put their documents online, the data online may be exposed. There's audit concerns, audit quality concerns. They may not feel that, if you're auditing in a virtual environment, it's as efficient, as good quality. And there's just a general lack of desire to change. Human nature is, we like doing things we know how to do. So it's just a different way to do it. So people don't necessarily like that. So the interesting thing about COVID is that it kind of forced the hands of the people that want to change. So we saw that there was a 68% increase in the work from home and for a 5-day work week for employees during COVID. And 23% of these workers now work from home for the first time ever. So it's definitely forcing people to work virtually. And then because of this, you can no longer perform the traditional audit that you always could perform. So auditing has to change. So even though the hesitations may be in place, they had to try it because there was no other way to do it based on social distancing restrictions. And then so now that people worked from home for the first time, they started to realize that they actually liked it. So we can see now that on average, most employees prefer a 2-day work from home, 2 days work from home a week. And 76% of employees want to work from home at least 1 day a week in the future. So it's definitely a big shift, and people realize that they were able to perform the same amount of work and be efficient in a work from home environment. And they like the flexibility of this. So going forward, what COVID did was that it basically opened up this work from home environment and accelerated the virtual working environment. And this is creating a lasting shift in long-term work from home.
So we're finding that before COVID-19, audit firms were hesitant to go fully virtual, but COVID-19 forced everyone to start auditing virtually. So now auditors are seeing that a lot of audit can be done virtually, which is really exciting. So now auditing may never be the same as it was before COVID-19. And so this is just a rehash of the kind of the resistance to the virtual audit. And a lot of those resistances are the challenges that COVID has added to the dynamic of virtual auditing. So some clients don't have some of their virtual documentation in electronic format, and they have difficulty accessing physical documentation to convert it to electronic. And also the sudden shift to virtual auditing increases the cybersecurity risks because they're relying on more data. And also the economic impact of COVID-19 adds unique complications to the accounting estimates. Also, key audit team members may get sick during COVID, especially if we have a second wave. It could affect audit judgment. And inventory counting may be limited with social distancing. So all these challenges you may ask, will audit quality be impacted by virtual audits? Well, there are no formal studies concerning solely virtual audits. One study on the remote audits, which is mostly virtual, indicates that firms that hire remote auditors are more likely to manage earnings and have financial restatements, among other things. They argue that local auditors have an information advantage and the costs of gathering audit information increases. But there are some limitations to these studies. Before COVID-19, firms could shop around for a remote auditor in a sense, but now in COVID-19, firms have no choice but to work virtually. So the sample subspace in the past study couldn't be differentiated now. And also in measures of audit quality in the remote audit study, they use transportation costs to estimate audit quality. But in truly virtual audit, transportation costs are next to none. So there are some clear limitations with these types of studies. But still, there may be an increased incentive to commit acts of fraud to take advantage of the chaotic time and any perceived increased information costs working virtually. Some current practitioners at Deloitte say there actually has been an increase in efficiency in client collaboration during COVID-19 by leveraging new technology. But they recognize the enhanced importance of professional skepticism during this tough time. So this is not a formal regression analysis, but there appears to be no correlation between the number of auditing issues, which includes SEC investigations, bankruptcies, like lack of independence, so like negligence, malfeasance, investigations and accusations, with COVID-19 deaths in each month between February 2020 and July 2020. And this is a really interesting graph. So this is the cumulative going concern auditing opinions for March to June 2020. There's been 42 going concern reports citing COVID-19 pandemic as a contributing factor to substantial doubt of a company's ability to continue. And these are SEC registered companies. So auditors are definitely taking note of the economic impact of COVID-19. So COVID-19 has a clear impact on cybersecurity, and it's more important than ever. The rush to audit virtually created various cybersecurity risks as more information is being exchanged. Some auditing firms and clients did not have adequate time to fully invest in the infrastructure to safely protect their data and information. Changes that could be made to protect their information, additional servers, new or incremental virtual private network controls, instituting multi-factor authentications. We still haven't seen the full impact of cybersecurity issues, but it's still a risk. Companies may need to develop new controls related to the new technology tools that they use during the virtual audit and applications or devices employees may be using when they're working from home. So this is a PwC survey, pre-COVID-19 investments in technologies like VPN, VDI, and identity-based network architecture, mobile device management were found to have a significantly positive impact on the switch to remote working. While these cybersecurity solutions aren't foolproof, as we will continue to rely on virtual auditing practices, auditors and clients need to invest in these quickly to safeguard their data. Adam, you're muted.
So as we saw, there was kind of a rush to go to this virtual format because of COVID-19. And so companies had to respond. So in this survey for accountants, we see that, generally over around 50% of companies added about 2 or more tech solutions since the pandemic started. So there is a response in new tech being added. And with new tech being added, there's also additional risks for cybersecurity just for implementing these new technologies. So one thing that Deloitte did to respond to the threats of COVID-19 and even before, just to go switching to virtual audit, they developed in a lot of new software. So from the categories that basically the COVID virus impacted to the virtual audit or auditing environment, there are various solutions. So for virtual documentation and access to virtual documentation, Deloitte has a software called Cortex, which basically streamlines client data extraction process, process, the data extraction process. So then they can just search a database instead of reaching out to the client, having the client get the document and then giving it back to them. It's very quick, it's easy, and reduces latency overall from the communication. So there's also managing just systematic risks from the COVID virus. We have Deloitte invested in Optics and also leverages Tableau, which are basically two data analytics tools that help identify irregularities. So if a company is having a journal entry to try to manage earnings or something related to making their companies seem like they're performing better because of some impact that COVID had on their business, Optics and Tableau and these data analytics softwares are able to detect that very easily. So then you also have project planning and management in virtual teams. So because everything's in a virtual format, it's very important that you collaborate because it's not as easy as in person. So Omni is something that they're currently investing in. This is basically centralizing planning and activities for team members, so they're able to keep track of basically who's responsible for what's the progress on it. And it's very similar in some respects to Jira, if anyone's familiar with Jira as well. Then they have solving the inventory counting problem. So they have this app called iCount. I'm not sure if I'm covering. Yes, I might be. They have this app called iCount, and it basically lets the auditors and team see the results of a real-time count as it happens. So the advantage of this is it reduces rework because if there's anything that they want to, adjust in the count, they want to count a larger sample size. They're able to adjust on the fly, and as we talked about in previous classes, they're leveraging drones and cameras to perform this. So this is kind of what iCount looks like. You're able to have it on your computer or phone, and you're able to see the count that is being performed in real time. So it's very helpful. And this is something that you couldn't do in a traditional audit. So it's very more adaptable. It's very useful for inventory counting.
So this is a fun little study we found in 2019. It uses data from the CDC, and they found that audit reports are delayed filing, and audit quality suffers in audit offices most impacted by influenza during the flu season, which happens to be around the busy season of auditing. And they found a significant correlation here. And so in these terms, while the virtual audit opens doors for individuals who are mild to moderately sick to continue working, especially in regards to COVID-19 and the flu during the busy season, auditors should be hesitant to work even if they are sick at home trying to work virtually. And the authors kind of justify this delaying filing basically because of the sickness of flu affecting the judgment of the auditors. But it is also interesting to note, however, the risks of the flu may be decreased going forward because people, auditors and everyone will be wearing masks, and ideally it may become an integral part of life in the workplace for the meantime.
So just to kind of wrap up and talk about how the virtual environment is going forward from what we learned in COVID, Nick and I reached out to some current Deloitte staff and PAMBA alum to get their opinion. And so Douglas Schwarz, who is a PAMBA alum and current Deloitte senior audit manager, said, post-COVID, I don't think we will ever get back to levels of travel it was before. So we know that the virtual auditing environment is going to be dramatically impacted from what COVID presented us. And Big Four firms and other accounting firms are not returning to normal anytime soon. So they're going to need to continually invest in technology to enhance virtual auditing. And we can see that a recent survey that was done to accountants basically asked them, will emerging tech improve efficiency post-pandemic? And the overwhelming majority strongly agreed that will improve the efficiency. So we're going to see accounting firms keep leaning that direction. We're going to see greater reliance on communication and communication technology like Slack, Zoom, and such platforms. And then new auditing and accounting standards are going to need to be created and submitted to really understand this new environment that we're working in. And so There are also some issuances currently to postpone inventory accounting to some period other than this year because of the pandemic. So overall, the COVID era, the COVID impact to the auditing world is significant, and it really changed the trajectory of where virtual auditing is going, and even changed what the outlook is going to be. So overall, that's kind of the impact that COVID had to the virtual auditing environment. And that was it.